Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you here recording this on Thursday. It's about 5:30, a little bit of a different day here at the Combine. We are all still in Indianapolis, but a different day. Prospects started talking today, so no Todd Monken, no Andrew Berry, no Browns personnel talking. So we're going to kind of take today to catch up on some of the news that has happened today, maybe talk more about quarterbacks because there is now potentially a quarterback available to the Browns that we haven't talked much about. And Mary Cavs, we've talked so much about, right, Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. And is this going to be the quarterback battle, starting in when this team returns in early April, all the way through training camp? Is it going to be Shedeur or Deshaun Watson? And we heard Andrew Berry and Todd Monken heap praise on both guys and their potential over the last 2 days. But the more, I guess I can't shake this feeling that, like, there's something, and I don't mean just drafting a guy, that it just doesn't feel like an Andrew Berry move. And it doesn't feel like a Todd Monken, 60 years old, finally getting his shot move to just sort of keep the status quo with that quarterback room. It feels like there's something, like they're at least going to try something, whether it's signing Malik Willis, trying to trade for Anthony Richardson, something like that. Am I wrong to think that? Or do you think that the Browns could be sitting here kind of talking these two guys up while they maybe have something else up their sleeve here in the next few weeks?
Well, they could have something else up their sleeve over the next few weeks, but I'm starting to get the feeling that they're going to try to trade down from number 6, see if they can pick up maybe an extra first-round pick next year. I don't know if that'll be possible. It's not like they have the number 2 pick this year, which is obviously way more valuable. But they've got the number 6 pick, and if they can trade down and collect some assets and be poised to take a quarterback next year in a much richer quarterback class, then I think that maybe that's the trick they have up their sleeve. Maybe the trick for this year is see what we can do with Shedeur Sanders, see what we have in him, see what we have in Deshaun Watson, get through the season with those two guys as best they possibly can, try to win as many games as they can with a bolstered supporting cast, and then come back next year and be poised and have an opportunity to take your quarterback of the future if Shedeur Sanders didn't turn out to be exactly what you hoped he might be. So if I had to guess right now, I'm thinking that they probably are not going to add someone that would supersede those two guys. I think that if they do add someone, perhaps it would be a later round pick and maybe they move on a little bit from Dylan Gabriel or something. But I'm not feeling a blockbuster quarterback move at this moment.
Ashley, what about you? I mean, again, who knows? We've got a week and a half, whatever, 2 weeks till free agency starts. Obviously, like, still 2 months until the draft, but it just seems so, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And I've been wrong a lot, but it just seems so un-Andrew Berry-like to just sort of sit on his hands if there is an opportunity to maybe upgrade at that position with a Malik Willis, or to take a roll of the dice on an Anthony Richardson or something like that. It just seems very un-Andrew Berry-like that they would just sort of keep the status quo.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing to consider here, and we mentioned this the other day, like last year, we weren't sitting at the Combine thinking, oh, they're going to bring in Kenny Pickett, right? Like, I think there could be a move like that. But like, to Mary Kay's point, I feel like I just keep thinking about Andrew Berry and the way he's talking about free agency. And, he said the other day, they are going to be more active this year than they were last year, which quite honestly doesn't take a lot. They didn't do a whole heck of a lot last year, but not as active as they will be next year. And this draft class is also just not as strong as everyone thought it would be at this time last year. So if you have a chance to trade down, like, that's the thing where you're like, it's Andrew, not like Andrew Berry to sit on his hands. Well, I think like the most Andrew Berry thing is trading down in the draft and getting more assets and kicking the can down the road and getting more swings at the plate. Because, I mean, the other thing I keep thinking about is even if they really like a Ty Simpson, for example, right, who I'm sure we're going to talk about, Mary Kay wrote about him on Wednesday and some of the things Todd Monken said about him. If they really like him, that's great. But like, they're also, I think, just have shown us repeatedly they don't take players like super far ahead of where they have them valued. So it depends on where they have him valued. It depends on how far he makes it in the draft and if he's available by the time they pick later in the first round or early in the second round. He probably won't last much longer after that. So that to me is like the part of it that is kind of Andrew Berry. And I don't know, like the way Todd Monken, like the more I've thought about how he talked about Shedeur, I'm like, is that kind of laying the groundwork for where this thing is ultimately going to stand in a few months? And I think it's a good question. And I mean, with the Malik Willis thing, I continue to wonder if the financials even would make a move like that possible for them necessarily.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to um like obviously we've seen this organization talk people up before, and sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not, or sometimes there's a purpose behind it, or sometimes it's just, hey, we really like this guy. And so I guess, Mary Kay, what it comes down to is how much do you believe how much do you believe them when they stand at the podiums and stand in those ciders and sort of heap praise on Shedeur Sanders and heap praise on Deshaun Watson? It seems pretty believable, but I guess that's the answer to this question: is if you really believe it, then yeah, maybe that is the answer. But if you don't, that's when you start to think like maybe there's another purpose behind what they're doing. I don't know. So I guess, do you believe them when they stand up there and say all the things they've said about these two guys?
I do. I believe it because I think that Andrew Berry really likes Shedeur Sanders. And I think that Todd Monken has come to really appreciate Shedeur now that he's watched film of him. He's met him. He's gotten a horse head from him for his birthday. Uh, don't know where that
Yeah,
came from.
that was interesting.
Very interesting. It was porcelain, so not a real horse head.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, so I do think that they have a real excitement about Shedeur. And for Todd Monken to call him an elite playmaker, that's some lofty praise. And I do think that they're seeing traits in him that lead them to believe that he can be a quality starter in the NFL. And I think that they really want to find out if that's true and if they can coach the heck out of him and bring that out in him. Now, does that mean he's going to win the job? Or does it mean maybe Deshaun Watson goes out there and shows what he can do, and then Shedeur continues to come up the learning curve? Not sure how that they would work through it like that, but I do think that they are being genuine in what they're saying to us, and I think it would take a lot for someone else to come in here and supplant those guys, right? We talked about Anthony Richardson. He's available in a trade. Do they really reasonably believe that Anthony Richardson would give them more than what they can get from Deshaun Watson right now? If they really think that, then you take a chance on a guy like that. You roll the dice, you take a chance on Anthony Richardson. Does that mean you're down the road kind of a guy where you want to bring him in and just take a look at him for a while? Maybe, but I don't know that he falls into the bucket of, oh, yes, you're coming in here and now you're going to be the presumptive starter of this football team. And then in the draft, they like Ty Simpson. I asked Todd Monken about him yesterday, and he does like him. He likes a lot of things about him, but do they like him more than what they've seen so far in Shedeur Sanders? And I think one of the key things here is that Todd did acknowledge that he feels that Shedeur Sanders has the requisite mobility to get the job done for him. And I think that's important to note, because if he didn't have that, then I don't think Todd would be very intrigued by him. But I think he sees the elusiveness, and I think he sees some things that he would like to work with there.
Yeah, and I actually do want to spend a little more time on Anthony Richardson, but I guess, Ashley, I'll ask you the same question, Mary Kay. Like when you're sitting there, and I feel like with Todd, I don't know. We don't know Todd that well yet. I don't know how much Todd is just going to sit up there and mislead us or try to send us one direction when he's thinking another thing. He's a pretty genuine, honest guy. So, when he just comes out swinging and Mary Kay asks him about Shedeur and he says elite playmaker in his first answer, and then everything we know about him to this point, it is hard not to believe him. So I think that's where I lean to, that I do believe these guys when they are saying these things about these two quarterbacks.
Well, and here's the other thing. Like, we know the context around Shedeur and Todd Monken, even though we haven't interacted much with head coach of the Cleveland Browns, Todd Monken, yet. I don't think Todd Monken would be able to lie or like lead us purposefully in one direction as a smokescreen in that setting. First of all, like from the little interaction we have had with him, I feel like that is unlikely. And Todd Monken is who Todd Monken is, for better and worse. But the context part of it, this idea of we know the Ravens liked Shedeur last year. We know they wanted to draft him to serve as a backup for Lamar Jackson. We know Shedeur didn't want that. That's why it never happened. And of course, everyone by now has seen the video of after Todd Monken got hired when he and Shedeur met in the facility briefly. And Todd Monken even then makes the comment about, well, we tried to draft you last year and it's finally happening. Like, I think there has always been some element or elements of Shedeur's game that Todd Monken looks at and thinks he can win with, improve upon, help develop. And I think adding to that context for me on Wednesday was the stuff I was talking about yesterday, that he really praised his feel for certain things. And I think a coach like Todd Monken is going to like it, that because those are the sorts of intangibles that you can't teach. And when a guy has a feel, even if he's not the most elusive, even if he doesn't, have mobility the way Deion Sanders did, he still is more mobile than people were giving him credit for this time last year. And that feel is an important part of that aspect of the game for a quarterback.
So let's spend a little bit of time on Anthony Richardson, who it seems like the Colts are going to trade him. They obviously signed Daniel Jones last year. Now they need to get that figured out with him coming off the Achilles and due for free agency. But he was really good when he was healthy for them. So Anthony Richardson, a former first round pick, lots of traits to love. You can go on Twitter and see he's one of those guys that has some highlight throws, like some wow throws that people like to send out. It's, can he kind of tame the rest of the package here to become a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL? Mary Kay, I could understand if the Browns would look at him and say, okay, look, this is a roll of the dice on a guy with traits who was a former first round pick. Let's go bring him in. But I actually think that would be a move that if they are serious about Shedeur and Deshaun, that's just kind of bringing in another unknown and muddying the waters more than you need to. You go out and sign Malik Willis, he's going to be your starting quarterback. That creates the pecking order pretty clearly. I think if you go trade for an Anthony Richardson, unless you really believe that he can come in here and be a starting quarterback for this team, you're almost setting up like what you did last year when you just brought a bunch of guys in and you ran a 4-man quarterback competition. And I think they need to avoid that massive of a competition. I just think an Anthony Richardson, because he's not a sure thing. And look, even Malik Willis isn't a sure thing, but you'd be paying him to be your starter anyway. I just think it would muddy the waters too much unless they really, really believe in him.
Well, it always comes down to draft capital and then money. If you thought you could get him at a bargain basement price and that you could pay him pennies on the dollar, then it starts to sometimes make sense. And if you let's say you replace Dylan Gabriel with Anthony Richardson and you find somebody else that might like Dylan Gabriel, then you start to see how something like that could make sense. But it will always come down to the price that you would have to pay and what you see as the long-term outlet. And again, if he could challenge for a backup role, or he could be a developmental quarterback for them that you can continue to look at and work on for a couple of years, and then maybe parlay that into a higher draft pick than maybe what you spent on him or something like that. Andrew likes to wheel and deal, so we can never rule anything out with him. Again, this wouldn't be like spending $30 million a year on Malik Willis, which I don't think is going to happen here. But it wouldn't be like that, where you would do that and he comes in as your starter. But again, if the price were right and you were shaping your quarterback room in a certain way with a certain kind of player that fits the Todd Monken prototype, then it might start to make sense that way.
Ashley, what would you think if the Browns traded for an Anthony Richardson? Like whatever the comp, we don't have to, we don't have to worry about the compensation, but just generally, if they just brought in Anthony Richardson for like a day 3 pick or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I immediately am like, oh, yeah, there's so much better off with Anthony Richardson here now. Like, to what Mary Kay's saying, he's kind of a guy that at least right now feels like that more of a developmental prospect. And I think he didn't obviously really get that chance in Indy. They didn't fully develop him, over time. Like, he was thrown into starting, and now he has the injury history too. So I don't know. I'm like, how are you actually like positioning yourself better for the future by making that move? I think there are other moves you could potentially do to like position yourself to have a better outlook at solving the problem long term. But like, if you ask me, like, how many more games will the Cleveland Browns hypothetically win in 2026 with Anthony Richardson versus Shedeur Sanders? Like, I honestly don't know that they would win more. So it's kind of like at that point, unless it comes out that they absolutely loved him, they've loved him for years, they loved him in that draft, yada yada yada. Like, it would just kind of be surprising to take that big leap on him, I think, for them.
Yeah, and I think we talk about this all the time. Like there's going to be some quarterback that gets signed or traded for or something, and everybody's going to laugh at it and be like, "Oh, I can't believe that team's trying that guy," and all of a sudden he's going to have a great season. I don't know that that's going to be Anthony Richardson, but there's somebody out there. Somebody's going to take a chance on him, but I just don't know if this is going to be the right place. Let's talk about something else, Mary Kay, and that is on the defensive side, which we haven't talked a lot about. And that is something that you wrote today, Devin Bush, who is a free agent. And look, I was wrong about Devin Bush when they signed him. I thought he had an okay first year here. I thought he played hard. I thought there were signs. And then last year, he just took it to another level, playing next to Carson Schlesinger, playing in that Jim Schwartz system. I was really impressed with how he played last year. He looked more like that former first round pick that he was when he arrived in Pittsburgh before the injuries. So, how much of a priority is it that they get Devin Bush back in this building? And I don't know how much they can afford to pay him just based on everything else they want to do. I don't think he's going to command like top of the market dollars, so they're good there. But how much of a priority is it that they get him back?
I think he is their number one priority in terms of their own free agents, in terms of re-signing their own guys that are due to hit the market. I think he's number one on the list. And I think that they're going to make every effort to sign him. Maybe they'll get it done before he hits the market. If not, maybe the market will set his price. He can go out there for one of the first times and actually really have some great stats and some great tape to bring out there to the market and show what he's really got. I mean, he did live up to, maybe not exactly to number 10 overall status, but he came pretty close to being what you would expect from a first round linebacker last year. He was second on the team with 124 tackles. He had 2 pick sixes, 3 interceptions overall. That's pretty good for a linebacker. Those were his first interceptions since his rookie year back in 2019. And he did a lot of really good things. He always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. When you go back to his Pittsburgh Steelers days, he was their defensive signal caller. So he was their Carson Schlesinger when he was a young linebacker there for them. So he has the football acumen to be able to call those defensive signals. And, he's just a smart heads up player. He's got a ton of hustle. He's got a very high motor. He plays with a lot of intensity. Sometimes he has to maintain his cool a little bit. We've seen that. But for the most part, he had a really, really nice season. And the interesting thing about Devin Bush is that, again, he was that first round pick of the Steelers out of Michigan. In his second season, he suffered a torn ACL in a game against the Cleveland Browns. So if he can resurrect his career here with the Cleveland Browns, that would be quite ironic. And then the other thing about it is that his dad played for the Cleveland Browns. His dad was a safety here in 2001 and 2002. He's also a former first round pick. So lots of little angles to this whole thing, but they really like him a lot. And And as I wrote in my story today, that's up there now on cleveland.com, is the fact that he's really helped ease the loss of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And he started doing that at the end of 2024 when he replaced him. And then last year, he really elevated his game. So the Browns were getting excellent linebacker play last year from Devin Bush and from Carson Schlesinger and other guys. But those two guys together make a really nice 1-2 punch.
Yeah, and on a defense that doesn't have a lot of needs right now, bringing a guy like that back is only going to help it, repeat what they were able to do last year. And under a new defensive coordinator, who you don't want to create more holes, right? You don't want to create a hole where you don't have one. So if you can bring him back, if you can afford to do it, which again, Andrew Berry knows how to manipulate the cap, knows how to find money if he needs to. It just makes sense. And this is sort of this isn't the direct draft and develop. But, Ashley, if you're the team that went out and took a chance on this guy and put in the work to develop him and grow him, that's the type of player you want to keep around if you can.
Absolutely. I mean, he just fits in here so well. And I think like Todd Monken the other day was even talking about, because he got asked about having 3 first-time coordinators who have never been in these roles before. And he kind of went through each one about why he wasn't worried. And defensively, it's the fact that not only did they basically retain all their position coaches on that side of the ball, but a lot of the starters, a lot of the players are the same. Like they don't have a ton of guys ready to hit free agency. So it just will help, I think, with that continuity. And yeah, I mean, it's like you saw him, I think, like finally, because of the injuries, because of him having to bounce around, not being with one team his whole career. It reminds me of the way we've talked about JOK, where like the game slowed down for him. And I think getting all that extra time after Jeremiah got hurt in 2024 in this system that is very much read, react, clean up for the linebackers helped the game slow down for Devin Bush. And I mean, you can see it. I mean, just with the 3 picks he had this year, even including that pick 6.
Yeah, and like this is what continuity can do too for a team. And it's weird to say continuity when we're talking about a team that just brought in a new defensive coordinator, but it's a similar system that they're going to run. And of course, most of the staff is still the same on that side of the ball. So continuity helps because then your GM can go out and see a Devin Bush who was losing playing time in Seattle. Obviously, what happened in Pittsburgh happened. He goes to Seattle, was struggling to get on the field and stay on the field. But Andrew Berry sees the way he plays, sees the way he attacks it, and says that's what a Cleveland Browns linebacker looks like in this system that we have. And this is an example of why that can work, where if you have a system you trust and believe in, and like the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens, even with turnover they've had, you kind of know what you're looking for. I think, Mary Kay, this is again another finding a guy who is undervalued, putting him into your system because you saw how his traits fit in your system, and it worked. Like this is a huge win for Andrew Berry.
It really is. And Andrew Berry has established himself as a GM who knows how to stock a defense, right? I mean, he really has nailed it in so many ways on that defense. Now he's got to prove that he can do the exact same thing on the offensive side of the ball. And this is his year to prove that. He has to nail it over there the same way he's done it on the defensive side of the ball. And you're right. Devin Bush is a perfect prime example of that. Not only did he go out and acquire a player who's going to fit into this defense very nicely, this 4-3 scheme, this attack-minded scheme, but he went out and found somebody who who kind of was left on the scrap heap and had something to prove. And it's not the first guy that he has found on the scrap heap like that. And he really came in here and he knew that the Cleveland Browns believed in him. And then they let him be himself and they let him play to his strengths. They let him fly around. They let him play with all the hustle and the moxie that he plays with. And he's getting his it factor back. And good for him because that was pretty devastating. He was off to a really nice start as a rookie. He was third in NFL Rookie of the Year voting that year in 2019. And it was in 2020 when he suffered the torn ACL against the Cleveland Browns in a 38-7 Steelers victory. And for him to be able to put the pieces back together and go out and play the way that he's playing right now, that's pretty remarkable. He's only 27 years old. I mean, he's got a lot of good football still left ahead of him. And, sometimes the further out you get from a torn ACL, the stronger you get as a player physically and as an individual. So, he's doing a really, really nice job. And I think he's going to get paid. I mean, I think the Browns are going to be willing to pay him. Now, how much? We don't know, because there is quite a range for really good linebackers. He's never made the Pro Bowl. He's never made an All-Pro team. So he's not going to get Fred Warner money. Fred Warner right now is the highest paid linebacker at $21 million a year. JOK, his average is $12.5 million a year. And for the past couple of years, Devin Bush, like this year, he made $3.25 million a year. And I can't remember what he made the first year here in 2024, but it was not a ton of money. I don't even know if it got to 2. I'm not even really sure. But now he's got a chance to hit the jackpot a little bit. And I would guess, I can't really put an accurate number on it right now because I'm not 100% certain what the market will bear. But I'm guessing that he's going to be looking between $8 and $10 million a year, something like that. And I think that other teams will be willing to pay him that. And so being able to resurrect his career here is going to set him up financially for the future. And that ACL cost him a ton of money. I mean, he's been just working on those 1-year contracts since 2023 with the Seahawks. The Pittsburgh Steelers didn't even pick up his 5th-year option. And now I have to wonder, now that they're seeing him play the way that he's playing, you just have to wonder, are they going to regret kind of giving up on him a little bit too soon? Sometimes it takes a guy a little while to come back from these very serious knee injuries. So good for the Browns for kind of bringing out the best in Devin Bush. And let's see where this goes. I don't know if they'll get it done before free agency, but they certainly want to get it done.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes with guys like this too, when I talked to him when he first got here, it was like, I think he almost needed to go to spend that year in Seattle and, learn from some of those guys and some of the defenders they had there, and then come to Cleveland and kind of get his footing back. And so in the end, maybe this is sort of what he needed. Maybe he needed to sort of have this journeyman start to his career to kind of find where he is now. But, actually, when we talk about money, the good news is Carson Schlesinger is on that rookie deal for 3 more years. So let's say it does come in at $8 million a year for Devin Bush. Well, Carson's making 2.6, 3.2, and 3.7 the next 3 years. Those are his cap numbers. So I think it's fine to allocate $10 or $11 million a year to your 2 starting linebackers for the next 3 years. So I think that too just shows me that the money can work if they really want to get him back here.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what Mary Kay was saying, like this disparity across the league, that it's not like a premium position like you would pay for a premium corner or a premium edge rusher. There's just a wider range of salaries. So I think it's more feasible that they might be able to maneuver for a linebacker contract. But yeah, I mean, like to the point about Carson, that's why it's so important for them right now, given their cap situation, to have another draft where they are hitting on picks and finding immediate contributors, because it goes a long way to helping your cap situation when you have guys under control for 4 or 5 years and they're cheaper. They're cheaper than a high price 30-year-old free agent. And we know Andrew Berry said, they're not in the place to just be adding 30-year-old free agents right now. But a guy like Devin Bush, who you essentially developed, he's not old, he's a little older, but you were key in his development. Like you want him to stick around, and he's earned, getting paid here a little bit. And I think you want to be the ones to pay him because you know he works in your system.
Okay, there we go. That'll do it for this edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. We will talk to some quarterbacks, some wide receivers on Friday. So check out cleveland.com/Browns to see what some of those guys had to say. Also, check out all of our socials. If you are on a social media platform, go search Orange and Brown Talk. You will find us. So whatever you've got, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, go look for Orange and Brown Talk. You'll find us. And of course on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.